Hello. In this next video, we're going to be taking a look at some of the reasons behind not being able to pay a AP invoice within X3. There's a couple different common reasons that your AP item is not showing up for payment when you go and run a payment proposal or try to issue a manual check or wire transfer. So let's take a look at some of these reasons. So we're going to come under our APAR accounting, invoicing, then supplier BP invoices. So the first thing to check out when you're investigating as to whether or not an invoice is eligible for payment is going to be the payment approval status. So that's going to be found down here at the bottom of your invoice record. Okay, so I can see in this case that my pay approval is set to authorize to pay. Now, if this field is set to conflict or delayed or basically any value other than authorized to pay, it's not going to show up as being an invoice eligible for payment. Okay, so what you can do if that does say something other than authorized to pay and you want to pay it, you can come over to this Open Items button. Then in your pay approval field here, so long as the invoice hasn't been paid yet, you can go ahead and hit the drop down, select authorized to pay from this list, then go ahead and click on OK. All right, so that's one item. Now the second thing to check out is as to whether or not the invoice has been validated yet. Okay, so when you initially put an invoice into X3, it goes in what's called an entered or basically a non-posted state. So that kind of provides you with the opportunity to do a review of the invoice document prior to posting it. So if I come over here, my status field, I want this to read validated. If this reads something other than validated, again, I'm not going to be able to pay the invoice. Okay. Now the third thing to check out on the invoice is to maybe it's been paid already. All right. So a quick way to figure that out is, again, if you come under the Open Items option, then in here we can scroll down a little bit and we can take a look in this payment total field here. Okay, so the document total represents the amount of the invoice. Then this field represents the amount of the invoice that's been paid up to this point in time. So again, as you see in this case, if my payment total equals my invoice total, this item has already been paid. Ergo, it's not going to show up for payment in my payment proposal. All right. A couple more quick things. One thing that we run into sometimes is with respect to the payment method associated with the invoice. So your payment method is going to default in based upon the method that's assigned to the payment term on the invoice. Okay, so I have my payment term that comes in from my supplier file. So if I would tunnel back to my payment term, I would see that this SCT payment method is associated with that term. Okay, so for instance, if you're going to do, if you want to pay this particular invoice by check, you're going to want your payment method to read your check method. In the United States, that would be CHQ. Or if you want to pay it by wire transfer, this field should read WTR. Or if you want to pay it by credit card, this field should read CRC. So that's something to be mindful of when you're going to pay. If you're going into your, wire transfer payment issue, and the payment the payment method on the invoice is set up to be paid by check, when you go to run your batch, you're not going to see it in there. All right. Then one final thing to check out is as to whether or not the invoice is actually posted all the way over to the general ledger yet. So this sometimes can be associated with a problem with your batch server or your accounting task monitor being shut down. Okay, so one quick way to determine as to whether or not it's been posted all the way through to the GL is to come under the Zooms menu here, then down to Accounting Document. And if the item's been posted all the way to the general ledger, you now will be tunneled over to the journal entry function. Okay, so I can come in here and see, yes, in fact, this invoice has been posted. I have a credit to my liability account with my offsetting charges to my expense accounts. All right, so one thing, by way of troubleshooting, if you see this status reading validated, but you come over to the accounting document and it doesn't take you into the journal, that may be a sign that your accounting task monitor is down. Okay, so if we close page out of here and back up here, usage, batch server, then I can come down to accounting tasks. So here's my accounting task monitor. So in here, ideally when you come in here, you want this status here to read active, and over here in the journals on hold, that should read 0. Okay, so if this journals on hold reads something other than 0, in this case it reads 3, that's telling me that my journal or my accounting task monitor is not running, and I have 3 transactions that are waiting in queue to post over to the general ledger. Okay, so to rectify this problem, all I need to do is come over and click on the Run Now, and this will go ahead and start your accounting tasks for you. Okay, sometimes you got to give it a minute or two, especially if you have a big backlog of journal entries, for them all to flush through to the general ledger. But again, give it a couple minutes and that will get caught up for you. Then you should be good to pay it. So those are the most common reasons that I see for not being able to pay a AP invoice, whether it be a supplier BP invoice or a purchase invoice. So I hope this video was of help to you. If so, I would ask you to please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, if you have any questions, you can feel free to inbox me.